What's that story you've never been able to tell? My mom probably has factitious disorder. She used to gather my siblings and I together to announce she has insert cancer or deadly disease here and then make us cry and hug her. She has ruined so many of my major life events to rant about herself and all of her illnesses. I haven't called to check in on her with everything that is going on because I do not want to hear her hours-long spew of disease and sickness, because I always think she is lying. She may actually be at serious risk of death from COVID-19, and I still don't want to hear her talk about it. She could die, and I think I would feel relief. Edit. My mom has never been officially diagnosed with any mental illness. I don't mean to sound like an armchair psychologist. She thinks psychology is nonsense and refuses to seek help. She has purposely hurt herself for attention, and she is always heavily addicted to painkillers for a long time now. Edit 2. Thank you for all the kindness and stories of shared experience. Be safe in all of this craziness. The night my son was born, my wife lost a lot of blood. In an instant, our delivery room was filled with 25 medical personnel after a rapid response call. My wife was white as a ghost and hardly coherent. I stood beside her holding her hand while she received emergency blood and plasma and platelets. I was in total shock in the moment until my wife locked eyes with me and asked, "Am I dying?" I lost it. I'm losing it now typing this. It was the scariest moment of my entire life and I really have trouble reliving it. 8 months later, wife and baby are happy and healthy. Give birth in hospitals. You never know what can go wrong and the staff there saved her life that night. Back when I was in high school, I wanted to approach this girl on a bus on my way to school. She was really hot, and I knew I'd regret it if I didn't approach her. There was one big problem. There was a middle-aged lady seated next to her, and I couldn't talk to this girl with the lady right next to her. I had to think of a quick way to get rid of the lady. I then woke up from my seat, slowly walked to the row they were seated, and calmly asked the lady, "Excuse me ma'am, could you please let me sit next to my sister?" Turns out the lady was the girl's mom. My mom and I used to fight a lot, mostly just verbally, when I was growing up. A few times it got physical, but I was always too scared to do anything about it. One time I finally stood up for myself. When I was about 18, she started hitting me, and being 9 inches taller and a good 60-pound heavier, I was able to get her on the floor and stop her from hitting me. Not saying I didn't get heated either, but I was just trying to get her to stop. I had no fighting experience or anything. Anyway, after she calmed down slightly, I went up to my room to get away from her, and pretty soon after the police came round to take me into custody. She didn't press charges thankfully, but she showed no remorse when I got home, even though the whole scenario devastated me for obvious reasons. But I'd never really been in trouble before, as I was always a good kid growing up, not a rule breaker. I was so ashamed I've not told anyone about it in the decade since it happened, and it was definitely a catalyst for me to cut off all contact with my mother. Found an online profile of someone in another country. On a whim, decided to go on vacation together. Didn't do any communication other than email. Got on 24h worth of flights. Met up and paddled off that day. We spent 26 days canoeing from the tundra to the Arctic and didn't see anyone else the whole time. Edit. Typo. That either sounds like the most awesome thing or the worst idea depending on how it went. When I was a college freshman, I tried to boil 3 eggs then fell asleep. I woke up to a smell. I went to the stove and the water was completely gone from the pot. So like an idiot, I got some water in a big bowl and poured it into the pot. You probably know where this is going. The eggs exploded like dynamite. Scalding hot egg hit my face. It blew me back and knocked me to the floor. Here's the scary part. I felt my face and looked at the egg on my finger, but thought it was burnt skin coming off my face. I almost started crying. How badly burned was I that my facial skin came off to the touch? I walked to the bathroom, shaking, and looked in the mirror. I expected to see a horribly disfigured face, but I saw egg and eggshells. I wiped it with my hand and felt incredible relief. I also felt incredibly stupid, but so what, right? I spent the next hour cleaning egg off the ceiling, the walls, the floor, etc. My face was red for a couple days. About 6 months ago, I was very close to suicide. I actually was about to do it. Thinking about killing myself, and at one point I had agreed to myself I would end it. I got home that night, and it was just me and my cat as my fiancée was at work. My cat, I think she knew I was sad, and she never sits in people's laps, sat up in my lap, and proceeded to flip on her belly and play wrestle with my hand. I broke down for about 3 hours. My fiancée came home knowing none the wiser, but had brought my favorite dish from her work, brewery, cause she knew I was feeling down. I've never told her. That was the night I decided not to pull the trigger. Just wanna put a little edit out there. Y'all are all too kind. I tried replying to as much as possible, and it's good to know there are so many kind souls out there. If you ever feel the same way I did, be sure to find someone who will listen. It can be me if you want. Or the suicide hotline, anything. Just know the world is a better place with you in it. Stay strong. I work at a cinema, and while doing a general check that everything is operating smoothly, a peculiar movement caught my eye. This particular session was a Father's Day session for Pixels back in 2015. The entire crowd consisted entirely of fathers and their young children, except for the young couple fucking in the back row. Poor, innocent 16-year-old me, fresh on the job, was gobsmacked and I froze much like a deer in the headlights. I couldn't bring myself to give them the old "hey please stop fucking thanks," so the manager gave them the awkward tap on the shoulder. Cut to the end of the film, the manager and I are at the exit waiting to see the faces of the culprits. Straight out the door, operating at some serious pace, is my sister's best friend and her boyfriend. Both, surprisingly, were clearly in a great mood until she made eye contact with a stunned Ethiopian. No face has ever gone from all smiles to utter horror so quick. Edit, grammar. This is probably going to get lost, but I just want to put it out into the void. I'm a recovering drug addict. I dropped out of school, but would still show up on campus to pick up drugs or meet people. I was sitting outside the cafe one night waiting on some pills. I weighed 100 pounds soaking wet and hadn't eaten in days. There was this girl in the honors program with me when I was still enrolled, and we had many classes in that program together. She was a unique young lady. My friend and I bullied her in the past and didn't try to hide it. She walked by and asked me how I was, and I was so clearly sick. There was an awkward silence and she asked me if she could buy me some food. She took me into the cafe and bought me a cookie. I said thank you, and we parted ways. I cried so hard that night. I was overwhelmed with guilt and gratitude and shame. I never saw her again. That was about 8 years ago, and I remember it clearly, down to what I was wearing. I don't remember her name, but I will never forget her kindness. It was a bright moment in an otherwise sad time in my life. Wherever she is, I wish I could thank her. This is crazy, me too. He used to creep around the soccer field my team used for training when I was a kid. Kringlebotn. He told some kids to kick him in the balls for a 100 Norwegian kroner bill, and they did. Damn, what a nut job he was. He was loitering in an Avazon when I met him. It's crazy how long he was active with how obvious he was when creeping on kids. The time my mum needed to go back into the house to get a scarf. Because of this we were held back and missed a bus by 10 seconds. That bus then crashed into a bridge at very high speed because the bus driver had mental health problems. It is the closest I have ever been to death. I will never complain about my mum going back to get a scarf in my life again. Something similar happened to me. I was driving my cousin and her husband. We were all very young in our early 20s. We were at a stoplight with limited visibility when I was overcome with heat. I was so hot I was compelled to try and take my sweatshirt off at the red light and ask my cousin to help pull the sleeve. It got stuck over my head and I missed the light right as it turned green. I went to hit my gas and her husband yelled, "Wait," from the back seat. An 18-wheeler ran the red and swooshed directly in front of our car. In 6th grade, we had this paper we had to write. I forget what the subject was. I decided to procrastinate a lot. Then the day it was due rolled around, and I had nothing. We had to read our papers out loud in front of the class. I was totally prepared to take the 0, but then I realized he wasn't actually taking the papers we used. So I decided to go up to the front of the class with a blank sheet of paper and improvise. I ended up getting an 80. Crazy shit, bro. In the 7th grade, we were assigned to read any non-fiction book and write an essay about it. My dumbass forgot, and in a stroke of genius, improvised a whole ass book out to thin air. Characters, author, plot, it was all made up. I got a 95 on that assignment. That was the peak of my life. When I was just a boy, I was touched when I was getting my haircut. My father had to make a quick run to the ATM. So we were alone. I never realized it affected me that much, and honestly didn't even think about it for years, until I drove by the place where the barber shop used to be, and just felt immense stress. I would never tell my father. He has always been insecure about whether or not he's been a good father to me. This would make him hate himself. Edit. Thanks to everyone who gave me support just now, and to everyone else who told their stories below. You're so brave, and I'm always here for you. I have never came out with this story to anyone except for one close friend. Everyone who supported me here has me one step closer to talking more about what happened to me. My aunt was forced to hand her kids over to her alcoholic ex for a weekend visitation, but she was terrified he'd hurt them, so she sent me with them. I was 7 or maybe 8. They were 2 and 4. I thought myself so much older, and decided it was the responsible thing to do, so I went. While at his apartment, he got wasted and called my aunt, and told her he was going to throw them off his very high balcony. They were asleep. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat up all night, no small feat at that age, to make sure he didn't kill my baby cousins. Nobody knows. I think about it daily and wonder if it's why I have panic disorder. I wish there were better ways to protect kids in separations. Edit. I can't believe all the love. Holy shit, you guys are awesome. I considered deleting this in case my cousins ever saw it, but thankfully, I don't think they could possibly remember this. Thanks for my first ever awards. I've told this on Reddit before, but never in person. So I was at a water park with a girl I had a huge crush on and some of our mutual friends. I'm not a big fan of rides. She had been trying to talk me into going on one all day, and I finally agreed to try out this one really intense looking slide. Basically you go down the slide while sitting on this big inflatable thing, and it was for 2 people, so naturally I got paired up with the girl I had a crush on. We both climbed into the inflatable, which had these little handles on it for you to hold on to when you went down. When we went down the slide, it was way faster than I thought it would be. I accidentally let go of one of the handles, tried to grab it again, and ended up grabbing her hand instead by accident. I was really embarrassed, but she put her other hand on top of mine until we reached the bottom. I guess she thought I was scared, which is also kinda embarrassing, but it was a nice moment. She later went on to be my first kiss about 6 months later, and we are still close friends today. For years, I've been psychologically, emotionally, and physically abused by my father. One time during college, I went home late. I lived in my parents' house cause that's how we do it in Asia, because of schoolwork, or hanging out with friends. I can't remember now, and my father beat me up so bad I had so many bruises and cuts on my face and body. Besides his fist, he threw a wooden chair at me. The next day, I still went to school cause I had a scholarship, and I had a grade to maintain. Also, I don't want to stay at home. My classmates all asked me what happened to me, and I said that I was in a bad car crash near our house while I was driving my younger sister to her school. I actually can't drive at all. It is not mind-blowing or anything of the sort, which is why I never told it, but when I first started getting sick and couldn't move around the house like usual, my cat would yell at me for 2 minutes until I sat down. He would proceed to purr furiously over my stomach, which was hurting, for about 10 minutes at a time. He would chirp at me if I tried to get up beforehand, and keep bumping my leg as I walked past if I never sat down. Little did I know that he was trying to heal my cancer that was growing into the muscle by that point. He's a little Siamese mix, and he is very vocal, and I appreciate his little squeaks of support. He is a very good boy. Edit. Wow. Thank you so much for the bless up, gold and silver. I have never received anything like this on my posts here on Reddit. During this quarantine, I wish everyone the best of health, and that you can manage all of your family's needs. I will be going through and answering all of the replies now. My dad grew up with a spider monkey. My grandmother was a waitress at a diner in West Mississippi, and one day she saw a couple of men with this monkey handcuffed to the hood ornament of their car. They were driving up and down the road scaring the shit out of the monkey, and when they finally stopped in the diner, grandma goes out, rips the hood ornament off, and takes the monkey. So, she carries the monkey home, and not being aware that Monk is a pretty good climber, buds him in the pen with the hound dogs. Monkey can escape and does. His favorite thing to do was go across the street to my great grandmother's store and steal candy bars. She would chase him out with a broom most times, but one day the monkey gets wise and goes in the back, grabs the broom, shoos great granny out, and proceeds to feast on candy. This monkey loved my grandmother a whole lot, so he would try to help around the house, mostly by getting into the chicken coop, shoving his hand up chickens' asses, ripping their guts out, and taking them to grandma. I also believe he was the inspiration for Jerry Clower's famous coon hunting monkey story. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.